What's your "'tis but a scratch" moment? I got hit by a car my freshman year of high school. I went flying and lost consciousness for a split second when I hit the ground. Thank God for helmet. When I came to, people were all around me asking if I was okay and what happened, etc. I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm just gonna get back on my bike and go now, but didn't really move. Then people started asking me to call an ambulance and my mom, etc. I was like, why? I'm good. I even told my mom on the phone I was still gonna bike home. But as I was saying that, the people around me had started to move one of my legs, and I watched as my foot proceeded not to move. I had broken both bones in my leg completely in half and part of the ankle. Just pure adrenaline and shock. I also vividly remember thinking, this is what it feels like to get hit by a car. Also, the leg wasn't setting right, probably from movement, and the doctor decided to put me on laughing gas as he tried to crack my bones back into place. Was in a stupor laughing as I felt my bones grind. I am a bartender in a nightclub. One night while working, I was pouring a drink when I reached back with my other hand to open a fridge, and that's when I heard a pop, and I got a huge pain in the back/shoulder area. The pain was pretty bad, but I was sure it was a pulled muscle, and there wouldn't be much point in seeing a doctor other than getting meds. So I waited, fought through the pain, which was so bad at times it was making it hard to breathe. That was Friday. I called off Saturday and had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off before I went back to work on Wednesday once I biked into work. In all, I waited 9 days total before finally deciding to go to the ER. I had a collapsed lung called a spontaneous pneumothorax. 20 minutes after getting to the ER, I was put into an emergency surgery. I was essentially breathing with only one lung, and any major impact to my chest would have collapsed the other, and probably killed me. A couple weeks ago, I stepped on an anthill and got a bunch of ant bites on my ankle. 3 to 4 days later, the itching was unbearable. I wasn't sleeping, my legs were so swollen, and no amount of Benadryl or antihistamine cream was helping the itching. I finally went to the clinic to get a shot or whatever, because I was clearly having some sort of allergic reaction. It was a staph infection that had spread from my ankles up to my knees. I would have died if this was 1920 instead of 2020. I was on antibiotics for 10 days. And now, several weeks later, the dead skin from the infection is flaking off. My little sister fell down about 15 steps at our grandma's house when she was a toddler. She got up, giggled, and went to go eat some snacks. This other time, still a toddler, she was supposed to be napping. We were in the living room and heard a huge thud. We ran to the room thinking she'd fallen out of bed. Nope, she somehow managed to pull the TV down. This was the early 2000s. TVs were heavy as frick, and it fell on top of her. She was lying there in snow angel position, and my mom freaked out. When we got the TV off of her, she got up and asked for ice, not to soothe pain, but to eat. My little sister was, and still is, a champ. When I was a teenager, I got jumped by a hoodlum trying to mug me. I was just walking along and they snuck up behind me and cracked me in the spine with an iron bar. Somehow the blow, instead of being painful, just went completely numb. So I turned around and said, "What the frick was that?" I'll never forget the look of fear on the guy's face. He just dropped the bar and ran. Still get a weird numb spot on my back from time to time. Back in my baseball days when I was pitching, I completely lost a pitch and it beamed a guy in the jaw. He throws his bat down, glares at me with the glariest of glares ever glared, spits out blood, then calmly runs to first base as though nothing happened. It was terrifyingly bad but. I was mountain biking and fell off. I fell down part of the mountain and into a road where I almost got hit by a car. I got up quickly, thanked the driver for not killing me, and then got back on the bike. I knew the road would meet up with the trail I was on so I could meet up with my group who hadn't seen me fall. When I got to them, one of them looked at me and was like, "What happened?" I got off the bike, walked over while we waited for the others to catch up, and just said I fell off. He then looked down at me and was like, "What the heck happened?" I'm like, "It's nothing. A few cuts and scratches on my hands and arms. My leg was bleeding from earlier, and that was it." Then I realized I had scratched off half the skin on my leg from falling on the road. Basically a bad case of road burn. From all the adrenaline, I hadn't even felt it. They called someone to come and get me from the mountains. I wasn't allowed to continue, and one of the other riders saw my leg and decided they wanted to stop too. I just went to a pharmacy, grabbed some wipes and bandages, then we got a drink while we waited for everyone else to finish. Got blackout drunk while camping and fell hands first into the grate that had been over the fire for hours. My wife and friends were all freaking out, thinking that I definitely had third-degree burns. I came out of my blackout in the bathroom with all of them trying to wash my hands in cold water. When all the soot came off, I was somehow completely unharmed. Since then, I've been known as the unburned. A few years ago, I was sick. Not fun, but it was only a bug. I'd be okay in a couple days max. I started to get an unusual pain in my abdomen as the day wore on. To me, it was just a side effect of all the throwing up I'd been doing. I spent the night in the spare room for 2 reasons. 1, because I was so frickin' hot, and 2, in case I needed to get up, I didn't disturb my partner who would be getting up early for work. I managed to get an okay night of sleep, with the vomiting having stopped, but I still felt like crap. When my partner came to see me before he went to work, he asked how I was. I still felt terrible, but it was a tummy bug. I wasn't going to be instantly better, but that sharp pain was still there. On hearing that I was still in pain, he insisted on taking me to the hospital. I didn't think it was all that necessary, but I was too exhausted to argue. When we got to the hospital, I made darn sure the person at the front desk knew I thought this was a waste of time. After a lot of prodding and questions about if I was pregnant, it turned out it was my appendix in the process of rupturing. My first job was as a butcher, and I came into work one day with a raging hangover. I sharpened the knives, they were crap ones that went blunt all the time, and immediately proceeded to cut my finger open. I thought nothing of it, went about my shift, and when I got home to put a proper dressing on it, I found out it was as deep as the bone, and I wouldn't get feeling back in the end of it for literally years. When I was a small, dumb-butt child, I had a habit of gripping door frames when walking through the door. I did not discriminate between the latch side or the hinge side. Door gets closed on my fingers, gets crushed in the hinge, to the point where there's a dark purple line across them and a tangible groove. My mom starts completely freaking out over the injury, but I, brave little dumb butt I was, saw the distress she was in and what had happened. I put on my bravest face, my eyes welling up in tears from the pain, and said, "Don't worry, Mommy, it'll heal." I was right, it did, but still. I was making a ninja mask. I had a piece of cloth, and I was trying to cut out eye holes of it using a small steak knife. No, it wasn't on my face. I wasn't quite that stupid. But I was holding the cloth and cutting with the knife. The knife slipped and went straight into my pinky finger. I had to actually pull the knife out. It went right beside my joint and stabbed straight through the flesh on my pinky. I pulled the knife out and blood was just pouring out of me, which was weird to me at the time. I didn't realize a pinky would bleed that much. The worst part is, I was home alone. It didn't really hurt that badly. Strange as it may seem, it was honestly no worse than a regular cut, pain-wise. Anyway, the blood was coming out at a rate which I had never seen before. I went to the bathroom and wrapped like 7 band-aids around it, and then took some masking tape and wrapped that around all the band-aids. I was like, surely that'll stop bleeding. I said frick the ninja mask and sat on my couch watching TV for a bit, then noticed the tape was starting to slide off. I'd bled through it and all the band-aids in maybe 5 minutes max. So I got some paper towels and decided to hold pressure on it, but the cut wasn't very symmetrical. I couldn't figure out how to get the skin back together. I did the best I could and bled through a bunch of paper towels and finally was like, frick it, I think I'm gonna have to call 911. So I called 911. They came out and by the time they got there, I was feeling rather weak. There was blood all over my sinks, bathroom and kitchen, and some on the floor. They transported me to the hospital and gave me stitches. Healed up as good as new in a couple weeks. Doctors said I was lucky I didn't sever any tendons. My mom came to the ER to take me home. It was kind of an awkward ride. She chibbed at me for being too old to be doing this kind of crap. The kicker is, I really was too old to be having accidents like that. You're probably picturing a 10 or 11-year-old kid. Yeah, no, I was 19. When I was younger, like really young, I had escaped from the house, and at the time my dad was just about to drive to work. I had managed to get just behind the wheel of the car and got ran over, got rushed to the hospital, and at around midnight, parents got a call from the hospital because I was running around the place like a lunatic, waking all the other kids up, and basically I got away with a tire mark, and that's it. Absolutely shattered my wrist, pulverized a couple carpals into dust, fractured my scaphoid bone and flipped it 180 degrees. Spent 2 days trying to convince myself it was but a simple sprain. When I finally went to a doctor, they rushed me into emergency surgery. Later found out the doctors couldn't believe I wasn't incapacitated by pain. Whoops. Fell off my bike and into some wet gravel when I was 8. No big deal. Scraped my knee and got soaked. Played the rest of the day outside and came home for dinner. Went to use the bathroom, and when I pulled my jeans off, I realized I wasn't soaked from the puddle. It was blood. I had sliced a huge gash in my knee, and when I pulled my pants down, a flap of skin pulled away and started bleeding again. My first stitches. When I fell through a window and cut my stomach open, my colon and stomach both fell out of my body while I caught and looked up at my friends bleeding out. Was in shock, but alas, 'tis but a scratch. Still here today.